Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see then what is making the headlines with the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, are with us from now right through until near midnight. Welcome to both of you. So, front pages then, let's start with The Guardian and the Foreign Secretary's grilling by MPs about the handling of the crisis in Afghanistan is on the front page, with Dominic Raab admitting the UK had been caught out and surprised by the scale and speed of the fall of Kabul. Daily Telegraph details how COVID-19 booster jabs will be offered to the most vulnerable. Experts are still deliberating, they say, on whether they should be offered to the wider population and are waiting for more evidence on the benefits of giving an additional dose. That's also the lead story for the Daily Mail, which says ministers are being urged to stop hanging around and launch a mass booster jab programme. The Times goes with the booster jabs too, reporting the top-up vaccinations will use Pfizer or Moderna, even for people who have received the AstraZeneca dose previously. Daily Express reporting that protesters are warning the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, that making millions of over 60s pay for their prescriptions is a tax on the sick. The Financial Times is leading with plans for the UK to move its Trident submarine base from Scotland in the event of Scottish independence. Piers in the Clear says the Metro, after the regulator Ofcom found presenter Piers Morgan was not in breach of the broadcasting code over his controversial comments about the Duchess of Sussex, and Brand's attempts to silence him as a chilling restriction on freedom of expression. Come to that in a moment, but let's bring in Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire and start with the appearance before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee of Dominic Raab. The Guardian, like a number of newspapers, picking up on what Mr Raab said. The central assessment was that Kabul would not fall this year, but he was shown a document in July, his own Foreign Office assessment, which said otherwise. Kevin.
No, absolutely. Warned that it was possible the Taliban would rise rapidly, take power, the UK embassy would have to be closed and evacuated. And of course, this was before he went on his holiday, a date he will not confirm, but it's believed to be in the 6th of August. The document was the 22nd of July. And he clearly has questions to answer on that. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, his department, are trying to play down the report, a risk assessment analysis. He was taken by surprise with it when it was produced by Tom Tugendhat, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Commons, who served twice in Afghanistan. Is concerned, for instance, his own interpreter is stuck there with his family and didn't get airlifted out. And he's proven a pretty effective foe of the Foreign Secretary on this. And I thought they looked over those 2 hours. When he left, Raab was overheard to go, whew, do a big phew sound because he got out. But it was a pretty woeful performance, I thought. He doesn't seem to know the numbers of people who are there who still need to be airlifted out. And he tried to create the impression he was both taken by surprise and incredibly well prepared and expecting it. You can't have it both ways.
Yes, the specific paragraphs that Tom Tugendhat read out, he said, your principal risk report dated July the 22nd said peace talks stalled, US-NATO withdrawal resulting in rapid Taliban advance. This could lead to fall of cities, collapse of security forces as Taliban return to power. Embassy may need to close if security deteriorates. Would you go on holiday if you'd just read that, Andrew?
No, I wouldn't. And I suspect from the way it was definitely Dominic Raab's most uncomfortable moment during that Select Committee hearing, because he actually said to Tom Tugendhat, who was chairing the committee, what's the source? He didn't seem to realise that Tugendhat was reading from a paper that had been prepared for him as Foreign Secretary. Now, look, millions of pieces of paper cross ministers' desks all the time, but this was a very important report, a monthly report updating on the situation in Afghanistan, and it revealed that the Taliban were already making rapid advances across the country. Now, if he'd read that report, I think it's inconceivable he would have gone away. Why didn't he read that report? Then that's a failure in his office, isn't it? Because it's the job of his civil servants, his advisors, to make sure that the Secretary of State sees the most important stuff. So it was difficult. Tom Tugendhat actually could have exploited that more, I think. I mean, there's clearly no love lost between these two guys. They're both almost the same age. Tugendhat's a backbencher, Raab's a foreign secretary. Tugendhat makes no secret of the fact he'd quite like to be a foreign office minister, but he could have exploited it more, and he didn't. And the other uncomfortable moment, of course, for Dominic Raab was the repetition yet again of the fact he simply doesn't know how many people we've left behind in Afghanistan. He said he thinks it's the low hundreds. How does he know it's not the low thousands?
Well, Tom Tugendhat, of course, what was he? Lieutenant Colonel in the TA, served for 4 years in Afghanistan, helped set up the government of Helmand province. This is his brief, isn't it, really? But it would be blue on blue if he continued to attack a Conservative Foreign Secretary, of course. The double-page spread in the Times, Raab was warned of threat 2 weeks before he went on holiday. If it was the 6th of August, as you said, he did not repeat when he went on holiday. And is that a central question? Does it matter now? Does it reveal questions about his competence? And why did he not say when he went on holiday, Kevin?
Yeah, presumably, right. The Times believe, and they say it was the 6th of August. He finally came back on the 15th of August after he had that extended weekend, which he's now saying Boris Johnson allowed him to. It's because he should first of all probably not have gone, and secondly won't come back, or should have come back earlier. And he won't say when he went officially, despite pretending he's given a full account when he hasn't, because it was so early. And he'd been away, so that would be nine days before he came back. Look, anybody watching the news, reading newspapers, looking on the web, listening to radio, would have seen the advance of the Taliban. It seems the foreign secretary, although he claims he was putting his family on the beach so he could then be in the apartment to try and handle the crisis, he just seems to have been asleep, as General Richard Dannett, the former head of the British Army, says. He's getting so much flack, Rob, from his colleagues and from people in the military. He's very arrogant, something of a control freak. Officials of the Foreign Office are said to be very wary of him because he wants to do everything himself. Well, he hasn't. He just clearly hasn't. The Times, in an analysis, concludes that it was very bruising for him, but there was no killer blow. I think that's right up to a point, but it's where does this memo go? Because it's been played down by the Foreign Office, just saying it was a monthly assessment. Well, whoever wrote that should be promoted in the Foreign Office, because they were well ahead of the so-called intelligence experts and more senior people who were getting it wrong.
Quentin Letts, then, in the Times article there, their self-serving salvo barely left a dent in him. Tom Tugendhat was so keen to upstage Dominic Raab with his Pashtun expertise. It was a surprise he wasn't dressed in a shalwar kameez and natty little top knot, etc., etc. But Dominic Raab, who's headed to the region, to which Mr Tugendhat said, a bit late to make best friends, I think, isn't it? Suggested that now his strategy was safe passage, an international strategy around counter-terrorism, getting humanitarian relief much needed to the area and regional stability. He's trying to move on from the last few weeks of what we've seen and the chaotic scenes in Kabul. Can he move on? Has he done enough? Andrew, just very quickly.
I'm not sure he can, because, look, we still don't know why he didn't make that telephone call, which he was asked to make while he was on holiday in Crete, in his luxury hotel. I don't begrudge ministers having holidays. They work very hard, but not enough money, in my view, and he's entitled to holiday. But he didn't make that phone call to the Pakistan foreign minister. He delegated it to a junior minister. And that call was never made. Now, that was crucial, because that was all to do with evacuations. And if he'd spoken to the Pakistan foreign minister, he could have probably told the foreign secretary, there's a real problem here. You're going to have to start getting your people out right now, immediately. No time to waste, because he would have known, being so much closer on the ground, how far and how quickly the Taliban was advancing. So that still needs to be resolved. But you're right, he is trying to move on. And I think the Times assessment is right. There wasn't a killer blow, but normally there never is with these MPs, because if an MP is developing quite a good line of questioning. They only get so many minutes, and then it's on to the next one, and they're more interested in asking their questions than and grandstanding. There's too much of that goes on at these select committees.
Yes, 'twas ever thus, I fear. But certainly there were some pre-prepared answers from Mr Raab. From mid-March to the 30th of August, I had over 40 meetings or telephone calls where Afghanistan was on the agenda, and he listed all the other nations he has to worry about, from, you know, Somalia to Hong Kong to Belarus and so on. But on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, there we see the result. The spoils of war once again. All these helicopters, which everyone suggested could not be flown, that were left behind. And there are Taliban fighters flying a captured Black Hawk helicopter bearing their flag during what they called a victory rally in Kandahar, Kevin.
Yeah, they've got to be, Anna, the best equipped militant force in history, because they have inherited so much US military equipment that was left for the Afghan army. Now, maybe the pilot was in the Afghan Army Air Force and has defected and joined the Taliban. Or maybe the Taliban weren't the country boys. That was the description of Nick Carter, the head of the British Armed Forces. And they are rather more sophisticated than they were given credit for. But it's incredible the US somehow didn't, at the very least, disable those helicopters by somehow taking out circuits and wrecking the electronics so they couldn't be flown. I would have thought countries around the world who are enemies and rivals of the US, whether it's China, Russia, or wherever, will be heading to Afghanistan to buy equipment, and at the very least to be able to study it and get any developments they can to produce their own. It's an astonishing treasure trove of military equipment that's been left for the Taliban.
Let's move on, shall we? Go on then.
I was just going to say, I think the fact that America has left all this arms and munitions behind is a sign that they were completely caught on the hop too. It's not just British intelligence failed here. It's a collective failure by the G7, who didn't seem to realise how close the Taliban were to Kabul, and that's why the Americans have left so much military hardware there. And the Afghan army, of course, disintegrated within a matter of days.
Yeah, rather reinforces Dominic Raab's central argument about the central assessment, does it not? Anyway, Daily Mail, your paper then, Andrew, just quickly, if you don't mind. Now give Britain a booster it needs. This is after the 500,000 vulnerable, those on immunosuppressant drugs or with blood cancer and so on, are told they will get a booster, or rather a third vaccine.
Yeah, what we're saying is, can we please get on with it? Because the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisations are taking their time, big time. They still haven't told us whether children from 12 to 16 should be jabbed in schools. And we don't know yet whether we're going to get this booster. Now, I'd have thought it was obvious. People over a certain age, I include Kevin and I in that category, I'm afraid. Kevin much more than me because he's much older. We will need boosters, but I'm thinking particularly people in their 80s and 90s, we should have that booster, I would have thought, at the same time that school children get the jabs, if that's going to be the advice of the JCVI, because we've got the capacity for it, we've got the drugs for it, and I think they've got the know-how how to do it. But what they've got to do is pull their finger out. What are they waiting for?
Oh, he's frozen on that moment.
Why are they taking so long? Get on with it.
OK, let's see if they're listening. Awaiting all of those announcements. Obviously, no, I haven't got time, because I know you want to talk about Piers Morgan, who's also on the front page of the Daily Mail, and the story in the FT, too. UK drawing up plans to shift the Trident submarines abroad if Scotland secedes. Back in just a moment with all of that. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, the consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. I know you worked with him. Maybe you will again. Who knows? Piers Morgan, in the clear, he says. Andrew, you're already starting to chuckle. That worries me. Carry on.
Yeah. Well, look, Kevin and I were on the programme the morning he had the famous meltdown over Meghan Markle, but this is a really, really important ruling by Ofcom, broadcast regulator. They've said if Piers Morgan was to be censured for giving an opinion, even if it's an opinion that might cause offence, that is a chilling threat. Chilling was the word they used, to free speech. And they also made the point in their judgment that Piers Morgan was very outspoken. He is outspoken about Meghan Markle. He thinks she's ghastly. So do I, by the way. But he said that the Ofcom report made clear he was challenged in the studio by Susanna Reid, his co-presenter, and the weather guy, Alex Beresford. So it wasn't as if it was just one view being put forward, but they defended the right of him to have to express those views as strongly as he likes. And it's interesting that even Adam Bolton, your colleague, Anna, has said this is a very important moment. Bill Neely used to work for ITN, who's won a BAFTA, hugely important. This is a pillar of our British establishment, free speech. So I'm really pleased he's won. And I hope she'll think twice now before she tries to get people sacked from presenting TV programmes if she doesn't like the cut of their cloth.
But if the interview was all about very personal moments for her, about how she had felt, like taking her own life, that being in the royal family was so, it's raw moments in her life, then actually having a sort of a journalist on a set showboating about it was something that had made her upset. Is she not allowed to complain about it?
Yeah, of course you can complain about it, but the fact is, why is a journalist in Britain or any other democracy, for that matter, not allowed to express a view as to whether they believe what the guest is saying in an interview, which wasn't an interview so much as just a broadcast? I mean, Oprah Winfrey didn't challenge her about anything. It was a shameful way to conduct an interview. So why can't Piers Morgan express a view as to whether he believes her or not? I didn't believe a lot of what she said either. I have made no view as to whether she felt suicidal. I'm very sorry if she did, but I still find it astonishing that she couldn't find anybody to help her with her mental illness problems when her husband is patron of 2 major mental health charities.
Anna, Piers Morgan did initially question whether she felt suicidal, then backed off on that. He realised he'd overstepped a mark. I thought the judgment was finely balanced because it talked about his comments being potentially harmful and offensive, and ITV should be more careful on how mental health is discussed in future. But as Andrew said, because Susanna Reid, Alex Beresford, and also Chris Shipp, the royal correspondent, all challenged Piers Morgan, so it was more balanced in the studio. That's why the free speech could have been defended. If Susanna Reid, Alex Beresford, and Chris Shipp hadn't been around that morning in part of the discussion, it might have gone another way against Piers Morgan. I'm not saying it would, but it might have done that. And it's rather like we discuss on the press preview with you, and Andrew's usually wrong and outrageous about stuff, and I'm wise and right, and it balances out, and we save it. We save it all.
When were you last about anything?
By wisdom and insights and fairness, as against his lack of.
OK, you save us, do you, by your...
What do you think of Meghan Markle, Kevin?
Oh, my God.
What do you think of Meghan Markle?
Can I go quickly to the FT? Very quickly to the FT. We're running out of programme. The UK making plans, thinking ahead of itself. It's a rare moment, I suppose, isn't it, Andrew?
Well, this is a story that comes up every time there's thought to be possibly a referendum on independence in Scotland. The Faslane nuclear base, what happens if Scotland goes independent? The FT is saying the government has been giving serious thought to it. One option, you lease the land off the newly independent Scottish government, or what they think might be more realistic, moving the base to the United States, cheaper, no capital investment. But that would suggest that our independent nuclear deterrent is a lot less independent if it's in American waters.
OK, Andrew, Kevin...
It's not independent. It couldn't be used without US permission. France has also considered. The SNP, being anti-nuclear, is a policy the SNP are support. We saved 200 billion.
Kevin and Andrew?
Moral
They'll have
weapons.
to continue that debate without me, won't they? We'll see you in a moment. Thank you.
On and on and on.